Welcome back, folks, to the Get a Grip on Lighting podcast. Yeah, that's the vibe of the industry right there. The vibe of the industry. It's vibing. It's vibing with David Nathaniel, Greg. Vibing it out.
That's right. Oh, great topic. Good discussion we had with him today about the lighting industry, about management, all sorts of fun.
Yeah, it was a good time. And that David's a friend of the show, so I think it's his second or
Mhm.
third time being on with us. And it's always good to catch up with David because he always got a lot of irons in the fire. He's kind of like us. He's cooking things up on the side and has a little side hustle and whatever. It's always fun to talk to him. So, David, always a pleasure. Thank you for being a guest on the show. Before we get past anything, though, before we get to anything, we want to keep it easy for you. How do we do that, Greg? We go to KeystoneTechnologies.com. That's KeystoneTech.com. That was so easy.
I'm glad you did it because I probably would have screwed it up because I don't do that part too often where I have to read it out. But we talk about today on the show, we're going to talk about not putting all your eggs in one basket and diversifying and growing as a business. And who's done that better than Keystone? I would say really no one.
Nobody.
It says you'll see on the screen right now, we're probably showing it says it began with ballast. 75 years ago, they said we're going to be a ballast manufacturer. Until what they are now today is a leader in the lighting industry. LED fixtures, LED tubes, LED kits, LED drivers, everything LED, everything traditional. They've got it all. They are one of the leaders of lighting, and it's because of their strategizing much beyond just ballast. They moved out into everything, and now they're at the top of the game.
You know, especially like in the last 10 years, I don't think there's been any company in lighting that's moved as quickly as Keystone.
Making it easy, moving quickly.
Yeah, keep it easy. Of course, where it all started for Keystone when they joined the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors. Yeah, that's
That's not
right.
a lie. That's a real deal. I'm telling you.
And so they joined NAILD at NAILD.org, and they made a nice 5-year commitment to NAILD. Josh Brown and I shook hands on that ourselves. And so from there, the rocket launched. But for right now, we got David Nathaniel on the Get a Grip on Lighting podcast. Welcome back, David Nathaniel.
Thank you. Nice to be back.
Yeah, say hello to Greg Eric.
Hey, Greg. How you doing?
Hey, good, David. We got to see you in person someday soon. We'll see when. Open up
I
that border.
I know. I know. We keep waiting.
So you reached out to me, I guess, a week or two ago, and just saying that you felt it was a good time to come back on the show, and I didn't want to talk about it too much before because I like it to be a surprise. Tell us a little bit about where Ascot Capital Group is now, and why you wanted to come on the Get a Grip on Lighting podcast.
Well, I just thought it was interesting to see how things have evolved. On our side, our main business was a lamp ballast business, which got totally disrupted. Fortunately, I had started Stanpro lighting systems in the mid '90s, so I had a fixture business that was on the go and I was doing well. And then we decided to merge the two businesses together. We announced it in early 2019, and it's now fully executed and merged together. And as well, in order to become less reliant on the lamp business, we started a strategy of doing acquisition, and so we've done 3 acquisitions in the last 3 years. And so now, as a group, I think we're well positioned in the lighting industry. I think we're not too dependent in any one area, and so I think it's a very healthy way to move forward.
And so you're diversifying your business, but you're staying in lighting primarily. Have you done anything outside of the lighting business?
No, we're really in lighting. Although I have aspirations of getting into electrical products as well, because it's the same industry,
Sure.
same specifiers, same distributors, same contractors.
What about tape? That was your big thing
Tape.
last time we talked.
Yeah,
That tape
tape is
rolling.
still there, albeit we're not doing as much tape business as we used to do. we've ceded
Okay.
that to a lot of other competitors, but lighting is where our focus is at this point.
So I'm looking at the different companies at Standard Products, Aimlite, Lumentruss, is it Beghelli and Gabriel Scott?
Yeah, exactly.
And why did you decide to diversify into those businesses 3 years ago? What was it? Because of the advent of LED, or where were you at?
Yeah, so we had a very significant lamp business, which basically for the most part went away. I mean, it's a fraction of what it used to be, and so we needed to become less dependent on that. So so uh, the first of all, the Stanpro business, I said, we had started in the mid 90s, and that got us into the fixture business. I ran it as two separate businesses. And then the guys running Stanpro started up a company called Aimlite in the mid 2000s, and primarily in emergency lighting, but also in some general industrial lighting. And then and we acquired Beghelli 2 years ago, which is we acquired the Canadian division of Beghelli, which is a large Italian public corporation. So we bought their Canadian business, which is primarily emergency lighting, as well as some industrial lighting. And so that was obviously, gave us a really good position in emergency in Canada, and it was a business we were already doing, so a lot of synergies between the businesses. And then we acquired Lumentruss a year prior to that, which was in the linear architectural business, lighting business. So that was a bit of a twist. It took us into a highly specified product range. They do a lot of business in the U.S. They do fair business in Canada. And then finally, Gabriel Scott, which is also um, architectural, luxury brand, high-end decorative lighting, and they are doing most of their work with designers and architects, and in primarily in the U.S. and in Europe via the UK.
So with this, I mean, kind of all these companies, it sounds like you have some that are Canada, some that go into the US a little bit, but why does a company like Beghelli have a Canadian division? What's the purpose of that? Isn't Beghelli Beghelli and that's it? Do we need to separate Canada out from the rest? Where does that come into play?
Well, I mean, structurally, Beghelli has divisions all over the world, and the Canadian business was one of their divisions, and they decided to divest of it, and so we acquired it. So that was really their decision on how they wanted to structure, but
Mhm.
um, they
Okay.
made the
And do you
decision
guys,
to sell off the Canadian business. Yeah.
sure. Do you guys, do all of your businesses get into the US market, or have you attempted, or where are you at on that? I know at one point, that's where I saw you, was at a few trade shows and things, but where are you at with that?
Yeah. So prior to the merger, Standard was attempting to enter the U.S. market via Chicago. We had a distribution center, but anyway, long story short, it was very difficult to enter the market. The distributors clearly have more choices than they need. Agents are hard to find. They're very conflicted, and also they're clearly happy with, or for the most part, happy with who they have. So it was tough slugging, and we came to the conclusion that trying to do this organically was going to be a problem. So we basically stopped the effort around mid 2020. So right now the businesses doing that are working in the U.S. are Gabriel Scott. They have a showroom in New York City, and Lumentruss is doing a fair bit of business in the U.S. And then the Stanpro standard business does a little bit, but it's really just opportunistic.
When I first met you many years ago, probably 20 years ago or something like that, there was a legend that you looked over every invoice that Standard Products sent out. And that was that you had your finger in every operation, every point of the business, and you were very hands on. And now that you're running a capital management group, and what has changed for you as an executive from those days when you're so hands on and you're so into the day to day operations of Standard Products to now when you're acquiring other businesses, you can't be doing stuff like that. You got to have a plan. You got to have a strategy. You got to be able to deploy human resources. What's changed in you personally, David, that allowed you to make that transition?
Well, number one, I really enjoy, like, as time has evolved, I've come to really enjoy the strategic side of business, as opposed to the operational side of business. So for me, it's natural to go in that direction. As the businesses have grown, so if I take Standard, which I ran and grew, um, over time, as the business was getting bigger, I had to delegate. So I learned how to delegate even on an operational side of things over time. And then it was got to the point where I learned how to lead as opposed to, doing. And so, we have a pretty good structure in place now from an Ascot perspective. We've kind of created our own sort of ecosystem where we have a monthly review. Each business has a monthly review, and we invite the other business leaders to join in to that review. And then what happens is there's a lot of collaboration and there's a lot of information sharing, and it brings benefits to all the businesses that are involved. So for me, it's just been really natural and not difficult. The harder part was when I was in the operating side of the business was delegating, but I learned how to do that over the years, and so now it's become quite natural, and I have a better work-life balance, and I stay at a certain level, so I don't have to get into the fray, and it's for me, I find it very enjoyable.
The timing right now. So we're everyone knows what's happening right now. It's February 2021, so everyone knows where we're at. Do you think it's a good time to make acquisitions and to try to grow your business, or is it more of a better time to hunker down?
Um, if you would have asked me that in March or April, I probably would have said hunker down because frankly, you know, we were in shock, with the impact of the pandemic, didn't know what we were going to do, didn't know if our customers were going to pay their bills. We had no idea if the sky was falling or not. So definitely, it took us about 6 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks to sort of, and I'm probably the same for most businesses. It took us, that time period to try to realize that okay, life was going to go on. We had to make some changes. We had to protect the business. We had to take care of our employees, and then just sort of see how things. Keep your foot on the gas, keep your foot on the brake, and sort of just adjust. I would say now, a year later, I think it's a good time. Not saying it's a better time than it was a year than say 2 years ago, but I think it's a good time to move forward. I think we've learned that we can manage a business in a period of crisis and manage it fairly well, and so that gives us a lot of confidence moving forward. And I think there's potentially more opportunities today from an acquisition standpoint than there might have been before, because typically the businesses we're looking at are sort of owner operated businesses, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs in their maybe in their early 60s or in their 60s or 70s um, might have come to the conclusion that this instability is just not worth it, and maybe they're better to just, if they don't have a succession in place, maybe it's better to just exit and be safe and sort of enjoy life. So I don't know if that's the case, but I definitely think it probably had an impact.
When you look at the businesses that you have purchased, and you mentioned the owner operator thing, is it important when you're doing this that you keep that owner operator on, or does it depend on the business and you cut those people right away, or do they have a certain amount of time that you need them there to really keep it going?
Yeah, so the owner operator is very important. So we maintain in some cases the owner has maintained some equity in the business. In other cases they haven't. But basically, yes, they're running the business as usual, but now they have a lot more, um, let's just say a much stronger structure and foundation. On the financial side, they have much better controls, much better reporting. They have access to capital that they didn't have before, so more working capital available to them. And then sort of on the operational side, best practices. They have a lot of support, whether it be sourcing or production. For example, we have Stanpro has an SMT shop, so we make our own boards or we populate our own boards, so that helps out some of the other businesses. Uh, just really sharing ideas, relationships, taking advantage of relationships, all that. But the intent really is that for every business to be run independently and to succeed in that respect.
Is there any instances, and there's got to be, where a couple of your companies can compete for the same sale? I mean, you guys have similar products on some of these, so does that happen
Yeah,
ever?
it happens, and we're what are we, four or five companies? There's no shortage of competitors in the lighting industry, so it's you know it is what it is. I'd say the bigger overlap really is really with Stanpro, Aimlite, and Beghelli because they're all in Canada. They're all more or less in similar product, and but it's the strength of their sales network. So the either the agents or the direct sales forces that are getting them into projects, getting specified, and winning the business.
And as you have taken over some of these companies and you kept the owner operator, has it been difficult for some to transition to your model of business, or are you having to hire new employees that fit what you guys are trying to do, or has it been pretty smooth in terms of that?
No, it's been pretty smooth. It's been pretty smooth. I mean,
Mhm.
not we don't have 20 examples of it. We have three
Yeah.
examples of it, but it's been pretty smooth. I think they're really happy. The guy, like say at Lumentruss, Eric is super happy. Eric and Anthony are super happy with the support they've received, their ability to grow the business, and have the support to do that. I'd say the same thing for well, Gabriel Scott's really new, but um, clearly they've already identified a ton. We did a strategic planning initiative with them. So now they have a much clearer idea of what to focus on going forward. They're getting help on sourcing. They're getting help on HR, on finance, um, on some of the on the production, a little bit of production methods and whatnot. So it's still new, but they're very excited to have the support. And I guess in a year from now, we'll see whether they felt that they got what they wanted. But I think they will because
Yeah.
we're we're pretty happy with how we support the businesses.
And you mentioned, so you did some strategic planning. How the hell do you do that right now? Give us a breakdown because we're ready.
Not that hard. Yeah,
Yeah.
sure. I mean, so it's if you break it down, so a strategic plan basically you conclude on a few strategies. So ideally not too many. So let's say maximum five. And then every strategy has a number of tactics associated with it. And every tactic has basically an owner and a delivery date. Uh, so if I take an example, let's say, Greg, let's say for you, your strategy is, I don't know, your strategy is to get into UV lighting. Okay. That's one of your strategies. Okay. So what are the tactics? Okay. So one of the tactics might be you need to research vendors that could support you in that initiative. Okay. And then, okay, who's going to own that? So say Jim owns that. He's got to deliver that by March 30th. And basically he goes out and does the work and then brings all that information back to you. And now there'll be other tactics, obviously. Then if you want to do it, then how are you going to market it and launch it and so on and so forth. So that's how a strategic plan works. And what it allows you to do is really look at your business, look at what are your, so you typically start with a SWOT, so your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, and then you narrow it down. You'll eventually get to the strategies that make the most sense for you, and then you come up with the tactics, and then what's very important is you track. So we're tracking every month. We have like a green light, red light, yellow light. So if things are coming in on time, then they're green. If they're a little slow, but they're coming, they're yellow. And then if like nothing's happening, then they're red. And then, typically you take the steps necessary to mitigate that.
Your planning is much more sophisticated than Greg and I's.
Well, it's not that sophisticated.
No,
it's
here,
just a matter of taking the time to sit to take it. Yeah.
Greg and I have 4 things that we do. Okay? So the first thing we do is we get it going. Whatever it is. Yeah. Get it going. And then after you get it going and it's a going concern, maybe it makes some money or whatever, then you keep it going. And you find people to run it for you. And then you say, what's next to add to this? And then after that, you say, what's the plan for it? Are you going to sell it? Are you going to expand it? Are you going to do something different? So that's how we kind of plan it out. Everything with Get a Grip on Lighting from the beginning was about get it going, keep it going. What's the plan? What's next? And that's how we kind of think about it in our heads, because everything we do right now, we have to start it. And that's where you've gone from. You've gotten out of that. And that's why I'm very interested in understanding that more from my own development. Like, I've started multiple companies over my career, and I still manage them every day. And I have a little bit of envy for you, and even the podcast, and I'm involved in everything all the time. But there's a sense in which that a certain amount of maturity, a certain amount of letting go, there's a certain amount of delegation that you talked about that you can learn as a manager, that you learn to trust people, you learn to delegate to them effectively, to give them reasonable deliverables, and this sort of stuff allows you to expand beyond that 4-pack that we have, Greg, into something a little bit more sophisticated. But I have a feeling that it was a transition for you too, David. You talked about it was a slow growth over the course of a career. Do you have much further to go? Do you see even higher places that you can go with this kind of a strategy where you can become even better at deploying? Because what you're doing now is you're not managing companies, you're deploying your capital effectively within an industry that you know well. Is that a good way to describe it?
I think I'm deploying capital, but I'm also deploying know-how.
Okay, yeah.
Right? So, like I said, we have a bit of a internal ecosystem amongst the different businesses and they're all supporting and helping each other out. And then sort of at the back end, Ascot's helping on the finance, on the HR side, and on the IT side. So that's kind of the structure. So I think totally, I have aspirations to continue growing the businesses that we have in our portfolio organically, and as well as to make strategic acquisitions, either in lighting, hopefully in electrical at some point in time, and again, supporting the businesses that join to be successful. So that's kind of where we're going.
Let's change gears a little bit here. I want to talk about some of the carnage that's been in the news recently. I don't know how closely you follow the lighting news. I mean, obviously there's Edison Report, there's Inside Lighting, there's LightTed, there's different places you can get information. But no matter which one you go to, it's all loaded with this company laid off this many hundreds of people, that company laid off that many hundreds of people. This is a very unique time. How much more carnage do you see before people start talking about growth. Now, there is a few growth stories out there in the UV sector. There are people in the health and wellness and that kind of circadian lighting talking about growth, but I'm not sure how much they're actually selling. Okay. So, but how long do you think before we get out of this phase of shrinking and layoffs and mergers and acquisitions and that sort of stuff? How long do you think this is going to last for?
That's a tough question. We're in a very fragmented industry. There's way too many players that are in this industry. From, I mean, look, China is where the majority of the products are manufactured. I know there's Vietnam and Mexico and whatnot, but China's a major factor, and the Chinese are they're clever and they're smart, and they have learned how to bring their products direct into many markets, including North American markets, and either through partners or either directly. So, it's really created almost a commoditization of the lighting business, and so I don't think we're going to have a lot of stability until the market cleans itself up. And what that means is where there's a good balance between demand and supply. Because right now, if anything, because of COVID, there's a decline in the amount of demand, but there's certainly no shortage in the amount of supply that's out there. So I think I have no idea what the time frame is. All I know is, we're trying to run our business as well, do the right thing, and hopefully, these macro trends will happen over time. But it's tough. I don't know. It's a tough. Lighting is a tough business. There's no question about it. It's a tough industry, mind you. A lot of people tell me their industries are just as tough. So
now there's been a lot of talk, and there's been letters that are coming in about price increases. You said that getting the supply is not a problem. Why are we getting all these price increases then? I mean, I know freight, right? Shipping. Are wages going up? Where are we at with it? And what is your thoughts on the price increase?
okay, well, when I said there was definitely too much supply, and I was talking more about companies in the lighting business. In terms of supply chain, there are many things impacting the supply chain. Number one is there must be a massive amount of demand prior to Chinese New Year, to the extent that it's very difficult to get space on the shipping vessels. So we've already had a few situations now where our containers have got bumped, and we have to wait 5, 10, 15 days to get on another vessel, and which never ever happened before. The prices have skyrocketed in terms of, I don't remember, I don't know I haven't been involved, but I've heard a 40-foot container is probably double the price of what it was 2 years ago, and in some cases more than that if you're that desperate to get your containers on a shipping vessel. On the electronic side, again, there must be just massive demand for certain electronic components, and so there's the lead times. Typical lead time that used to be maybe 4 or 5 weeks is now 22 weeks. So you have to plan for that, and that's creating supply chain issues. So
22 weeks. That's
for
crazy.
certain electronic components, yes.
Wow.
Yes. And I'm not that familiar with it, but that I read an email the other day from someone in one of our companies saying that the lead time, it was for I think it was for an emergency lighting circuit board component that goes on, and it was that kind of a lead time. So yeah. So I mean, so certainly freight has gone up, and also there's been a devaluation of the RMB and the U.S. dollar. So what's happened now is that the Chinese vendors are having to raise their U.S. dollar prices to offset the variance in foreign currency. So I'd say the foreign exchange, the freight, and in some cases the cost of components. To be honest, I'm not 100% sure on what the labor situation is in China, but it sounds like there's just a ton of demand for many different types of products, and so I wouldn't be surprised if labor wages are also being impacted in the sense that they are going up in China. But to be honest, haven't really stayed that much in touch with that.
I'm going to make a prediction. Okay.
Sure.
Um, so you talked about macroeconomic trends, right? Which is, economics being, the only thing that's worse than economics is like predicting, how to stop a pandemic. Those are the only people that are wrong more than economists. Okay, is the people that try to battle pandemics. They're the only ones that are worse. But economists are chronically wrong. And they oftentimes, I think, what you're seeing when you're listening to economists is microeconomics being presented as macroeconomics. I think what we're seeing in the world, and specifically in the lighting business, because the lighting business was one of the first industries to be globalized. So one of the first things to head over to China after in 1979 was light bulb manufacturing. That's one of the original things was being made in Taiwan. They immediately moved the plants to China, and then China just ran with the lighting industry from incandescents to CFLs to MR16s, and then now they dominate LED, completely dominate the business. But I think what we're seeing is the early signs of reverse globalization. So you're seeing countries that want to pull back on certain things, and there's going to be a ton of pain associated with that in terms of price increases, in terms of supply availability of components. I don't think people understand how integrated the world economy is, and specifically how integrated the lighting industry is with Asia and specifically China. They are completely integrated with one another, and it's almost impossible to untangle. But I think in the long run, what you're going to see is there a force which pulls which reverses globalization and reverses travel and more restrictions on borders. And you're going to see more and more and more and more of this, which will lead to higher prices, less choice for consumers, and so on and so forth. That's my prediction. How crazy do you think that is, David?
Well, listen, I think Trump, when he came into power, clearly he definitely moved in that direction. And I think you see in England or in the UK, Brexit and so on and so forth. So I think there's, I think it's plausible, definitely think it's plausible that countries become more protectionist, and as a result, the flow of goods from a globalization standpoint, become impeded, and certainly as a result, you get higher prices. Now, are consumers going to be okay with that? I.e., consumer/voters going to be okay with that? Judging by the shortage of capacity on ships today, makes it seem like there's a lot of stuff still going out of China specifically. So listen, I think it's, we're manufacturing in Canada, and we're assembling luminaires that make sense to assemble, and we're making our own boards for the products that make sense to make our own boards. And on Lumentruss is doing architectural lighting. It's all very customized, using extrusions and light sources and optics and so on and so forth. So it's all really made to order. Gabriel Scott is all, handmade here in Montreal. Beautiful, decorative lighting, sort of signature pieces. So look, I think there's room for manufacturing in North America, in Europe, and whatnot. I think there's some things that are going to continue to make sense importing, And I think there's going to be certain things that make sense to continue, whether it be assembly or whatnot. You know, are we gonna make chips in the U.S. for LED lighting? I doubt it. Maybe in Mexico. I doubt that either. I think that's going to stay in Asia. You know, I don't see that being, you know, onshored. Maybe for something more military equipment, or, you know, something more sophisticated than LED chips, yeah. But for lighting, I really doubt it.
It's going to be interesting to
It,
see, Greg. I would say, just to
yeah.
add a name to that, that Biden's policy towards China is going to be likely very, very similar to Trump's. Although there'll be less, maybe, viscosity in the language. I don't think that the policy is going to change much. What's up, Greg?
So, taking the last year into account and all the different companies that you run there, David, what product or product category had the most growth?
Wow.
Don't say social distancing signs, please.
What product had the
If you're
most
comfortable saying,
growth?
yeah, I mean, if there's one, was it like you sold more, whatever, architectural fixture or whatever? It can be general, but just in general, what had the best performance?
Um, okay, well, in what has been a challenging year, if we talk about just dollar sales volume, obviously the pandemic has created a lot of issues for, let's say, Stanpro, Beghelli, Aimlite, which are day-to-day products, emergency lighting, industrial lighting, commercial lighting, residential lighting. Definitely when Quebec closed the construction for close to 2 months in April and May, you know, our sales were down 50 to 65%. So I would say the companies that weathered the best are Beghelli and Gabriel Scott, because they're very integrated into the design of the building, or the design of the space. And for whatever reason, you know, there's, I guess, a lot of projects on the go that didn't get canceled, and as a result, you know, their business was far less impacted, if maybe not even impacted by COVID. So I guess architectural, probably, if we talk about a segment, I'd say architectural lighting was probably the best performer in our portfolio of products. I had to
Do
think that
those
through,
those?
get to that
Yeah,
conclusion.
no, that's good. Yeah, do they? And the question I have is it retail at all, and then or is it commercial or residential? The reason I'm asking that is because now that people are home, are they buying these fancy fixtures for their home because they're there all the time? Does that have anything to do with it, or not? Is that totally out there?
Um, I'd say Gabriel Scott does a lot of residential. The commercial business they would do is sort of hotels, or, you know, a signature piece in your conference room or whatever it happens to be. But I think you can see how housing has not been impacted. If anything, there's been a boom, and I think people have been spending a lot of money on their homes and upgrading, renovating. So on the resi side, I'd say it's really helped Gabriel Scott. Um, and on the Lumentruss side, I, you'd have to think, because a lot of that product goes into hotels, goes into retail stores. I mean, it goes to resi, but it's not, you know, that's not the main market. So you'd think the business would be off, but honestly, a lot of these projects are, you know, that are still on paper are still going, and the ones that have started are continuing. So for a while, I thought there'd be a lag. I'd say, okay, well, nobody's, you know, between, let's say, March 2020 and whatever, you know, till the end of last year, till the end of December, maybe people were not in the mood to go and you know, start their projects that are on the board. But it doesn't look like that. What I have seen is, say, some sort of you know, sort of multi-sector projects where they have hotel, offices, condos, retail. I've seen the office side be impacted where they're doing less office and they're doing more residential, multi-tenant residential. So they're adjusting their projects. But we've seen a lot of I think also that like the business hotels have been really hurt. Any hotel that's dependent on business travel, on conventions, those guys are dying, and a lot of them will be dead, and some of them are going to survive. But the leisure hotel, I think, has been strong. I mean, travel has impacted it, obviously, but for the most part, those are the guys that are going to bounce back. I was listening to your podcast. Sorry, I can't remember his name, but the fellow from the UK, and then he also talked about Randy Reed's comment about things coming back, and I feel exactly the same way as those guys. I think there's going to come back with a vengeance. I think people are been stuck for it's probably going to be a year and a half to 2 years, and when they can come out, they're going to come out. They're going to come out with a vengeance. I think travel is going to be massive, and so yeah.
Huh.
This
Well,
is
David, I think that's an interesting, that's an optimistic position. I'm not, I don't know if I fundamentally agree with that. I don't know if I think there's going to be so with the LED boom, what you're seeing is there's oversupply in the market, is what you were talking about earlier in the conversation. There's too many people
for sure.
in the channel that are, whatever, even if they have shipping delays, there's still too many people in the channel selling to distributors, too many distributors trying to go for the same projects and go for the same incentives. And that clog up, and I'm going to say this, you don't have to agree. I lay it squarely at the feet of the DLC. I think they're a huge factor in this problem. Their certification process, allowing anyone to get certified. I don't think their standards were very well run, or their QPL was very well run. But I do hope the travel comes back. I'm not sure. I'm not as optimistic. I think you're going to see less travel, significantly
I
less.
think there's going to be less business travel,
Mm-hmm.
but I think leisure is going for sure. I think there's going to be a wave of leisure travel, but I also think people learn it's not so bad staying at home, and it's not so bad living a more simple life. So, that annual trip to Europe or whatever, to Hawaii or wherever it happens to be, that might get impacted as well. Um, you know, but I do think people are itchy to get out there and move around. And so when it's going to be safe to do that, I think we're going to see a lot of that happening.
David
So
Nathaniel, thank you for being a guest on the Get a Grip on Lighting podcast.
thanks for having me. I
No
appreciate it.
problem. Yep. All the
That's
best.
it.
Okay. All the best to you guys.
Ooh, Keystone Technologies. Yeah. They don't swim against the current. They keep it easy. That's right. Go to KEYSTONETECH.com, Greggy. KeystoneTech.com.
Long history in the lighting world, as we talked about it, beginning with ballast and now all the way to the point where they're a leader, if not the leader in LED lighting. And I'm serious about that. They've come a long way. They learned what the lighting industry told them that they needed. Make it easy for us. Give us product we need at a good price. And back it. Can you do that? Yes. And Keystone did it. And because of that, one of the most successful lighting companies in the business today.
You got to go to KeystoneTech.com. That's KeystoneTech.com. The easy folks, light made easy, Keystone Tech. And of course, proud members of the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors. That's NAILD.org. Nail.org. Get associated. Stay associated. Come on, man. What are you waiting for? Too much time listening to the Get a Grip on Lighting podcast. You got to get in here, get on it, get after it. Go to nail.org. And of course, David Nathaniel, friend of the show. Thanks for coming on. Always love to have you, man. It's always good to hear your voice, and I'm glad to see that you guys are doing well through all this virus situation, and that you're growing, and that your company is strong, and that's always good to hear, isn't it, Craig?
Oh, for sure. You can learn a lot from a guy like David, and hopefully you did today.
Thanks for listening, folks. You know we always love you guys. Bye for now.